In my years of watching combat sports and the UFC, I mean, there has never been a card that comes remotely close to what UFC 300 was able to do. Remotely close. This was the best card of all time, hands down. I'd love to argue that with anybody. I mean, it was perfectly orchestrated from the first fight of the night to the last fight of the night. It was just a perfect balance of star power. The matchups were incredible. There's debatably one fight in there that wasn't up to par with the fans and what they wanted. But I even disagree with that. So let's get right to it. And we have two special announcements from Dana White that came afterwards, but we'll get to that. Be sure to subscribe, guys. Be sure to leave your comments below. I'm dying to hear what you have to say. I went 10 for 13 out of my picks. Could have done a little better, but we're going to break it down right here, right now. All right, Deiveson Figueiredo and Cody Garbrandt to start the early prelims. I can't think of a better matchup. I mean, two former champions. Deiveson Figueiredo looked great against Rob Font. He goes up against Cody Garbrandt. And I mean, Cody Garbrandt did not look bad in this fight. He looked as good as he ever did, but in my opinion, Deiveson Figueiredo is just a better mixed martial artist. He's championship caliber. I think he's a problem in the bantamweight division. I see him moving up the ranks. He needs one more good fight, and I think he's a real contender. Round 2 submission. We saw it coming. Cody didn't look bad in the first round. Deiveson Figueiredo felt a little bit of his power, I think, in some of those punches, and then just, he said, no, I'm better than you grappling. We're going to expose you. Next up, Bobby Green versus Jim Miller. I love Jim Miller. I was excited for him. I love the fact that he was on the UFC 300 card. A lot of history here. But come on. Anybody who picked Jim Miller over Bobby Green is absolutely bananas. I mean, Bobby Green went in there and just picked him apart. And that's exactly what I said was going to happen. Jim Miller had no opportunity in this fight. No opportunity. I think he had a couple of moments where he landed some good strikes. Bobby Green probably felt a little bit of power there. But for the most part, Bobby Green just absolutely took off 5 years of Jim Miller's life. And power to Jim Miller. I mean, he is so durable. The fact that he survived those strikes from Bobby Green, and at the end, he was almost finished, and he was able to stay alive and lose by unanimous decision. I mean, great job, but Bobby Green just proving that he's the real deal. I do agree that Bobby Green's fight style doesn't go a long way. I mean, he's very experienced, but his fight style is hood. I mean, his hands are down. He's there talking smack the whole time. He's talking, looking at the referee, and then hits you with a freaking jab. I mean, very exciting, fun to watch, but it doesn't age well. Next up, Jessica Andrade versus Marina Rodriguez. This was a fun fight. I think Marina Rodriguez was really winning the outside battles, and she looked like the better striker in general. Jessica Andrade had a tough time closing the distance early in the fight. She got into a groove later on when Marina Rodriguez was a little gassed. But ultimately, Jessica Andrade wins by split decision. And I think what really wins it for her is that she had the bigger moments in the fight. So Marina Rodriguez was capitalizing, just picking her apart little by little. But Jessica Andrade really messed up Marina Rodriguez twice throughout the fight, where it looked like it was close to ending. Ultimately, she couldn't finish her. But Jessica Andrade had those bigger moments, and because of that, I think she got the split decision win. But to be honest, I was not confident with her going into the decision. I thought it could go either way. I think it's a fair split decision, but Marina Rodriguez is a real deal. All right. Jalen Turner, Renato Moicano, holy frustration. This is the first fight I got wrong. Jalen Turner, what the hell are you doing? I mean, I'm still so upset about this. I don't know if it was because of his last fight with Bobby Green that he literally basically caught a body in that fight because of the ref. But he starts off the fight with landing a few good body shots on Renato Moicano. Renato Moicano looked like he was going to be finished with another nice shot. Ultimately, Renato takes him down, gets that control time. Anyone who was going for Renato Moicano, you knew the method that he was going to win was grappling. I mean, you got to grapple against Jalen Turner. Jalen Turner would have picked this guy apart 10 times out of 10 on the canvas. So at the end of the first round, Jalen Turner drops Renato Moicano. And I'm not talking about like an ice cold knockout. I'm talking about he hits him and Renato falls back. It's a knockdown. Any fighter, 99 out of 100 fighters, and the 99 is because Jalen Turner just proved to me that it's not 100% of the fighters, hops on their opponent when they look like Renato Moicano did. He was not out of it. He was wobbled, falls back. Jalen Turner makes the conscious decision of walking off. Like if it was this ice cold knockout. And he just kind of looks at Herb Dean. And Herb Dean's like, okay. Nothing happens. Jalen Turner did not capitalize on this moment. And ultimately, this is, in my opinion, what decided the fight. So Jalen Turner decides not to hop on Renato Moicano. There's only a few seconds left in the first round. Round ends. Second round comes around. What is Ronaldo Moicano going to do? Yeah, I'm not testing this guy again. I don't want to strike with you. He takes him to the ground. Ultimately, grapples the shit out of Jalen Turner, exhausts him, mounts him, and from there just lands a million blows from a mounted position, and Jalen Turner loses by TKO. Absolutely ridiculous to happen. He had the fight won, and ultimately, I don't think it's, I guess to a certain extent, it's inexperience, but absolute foolishness. I think it's just a terrible move by Jalen Turner, and he lost a fight not because the other guy beat him. He lost the fight because he chose to lose the fight. Props to Ronaldo Moicano. Sadiq Yusuff, Diego Lopez. I am a huge Diego Lopez fan. I've been saying it for some time now. In my opinion, he's going to be a champion. He comes into the UFC. He's entertaining. He has his little freaking peso pluma look. He's the real deal. So Diego Lopez comes into this fight and he puts down Sadiq Yusuff. In a minute and a half, he put down Sadiq Yusuff twice with a mean uppercut. I mean, these guys didn't exchange any grappling. It was straight to striking, and he drops Sadiq Yusuff. Sadiq Yusuff finds a second chance, right? He gets up. They're in the clinch. Diego Lopez follows up with another uppercut and just flatlines this guy. I am so excited for Diego Lopez. I'm so excited for the UFC. This kid is the real deal. And in my opinion, Sadiq Yusuff is a fantastic fighter. I mean, no one could say that this guy's fighting trash cans. This guy's fighting nobody. No, Sadiq Yusuff is real deal. Underrated striking, underrated grappling. I mean, he is a great contender in the featherweight division. And Diego Lopez just proved that he had nothing for him. So, guys, look out for Diego Lopez. He's the real deal. Holly Holm versus Kayla Harrison. I mean, this is textbook matchmaking. We have the striker, the grappler, Holly Holm being a boxing champion, Kayla Harrison being an Olympian and an absolutely fantastic grappler. What's going to happen here? I mean, the assumption is Holly Holm, keep your distance, land the better shots. Hopefully you put this girl out or just, outstrike the shit out of her and don't make your way onto the canvas. Kayla Harrison, the opposite. Get a hold of Holly Holm, grapple with her. Win the fight. It's that simple, right? Well, that's not exactly what happened. Holly Holm tried to somewhat assert her dominance, and she initiated the grappling with Kayla Harrison in the first round. Everybody was like, what the hell? And maybe it was like, hey, I'm not scared of you. Cool. But she got out grappled. Bad idea. I mean, it just didn't make any sense, and she goes on to lose the first round. Second round comes around. Kayla Harrison, more dominant than the first, takes down Holly Holm, and she is just beating the living hell out of her. Ultimately, she landed, I don't know how many strikes on the canvas, but she finds a submission, puts Holly Holm away, and I mean, that's exactly how I thought the fight was going to go. I'm just disappointed that Holly Holm didn't try to utilize her striking and put Kayla Harrison out. I hate that she initiated the nonsense. She initiated what should have happened for her strategy. Anyway, we move on. Calvin Kattar, Aljamain Sterling, what some people are calling the only fight that was not exciting in that card. I agree to a certain extent, but you have to give Aljamain Sterling credit. I mean, he did such a good job. Aljamain Sterling to go up to featherweight and to dominate a contender like Calvin Kattar the way he did, I mean, it's ridiculous. In the third round, Aljamain Sterling had Calvin Kattar with his back on the canvas for, I want to say 5 minutes. And I forgot who it was. I want to say it was John Anik said Calvin Kattar had 4 significant strikes landed up to that point in the fight. Not in that round, in the fight. And for you to do that to a real deal contender in any division, I mean, it just goes to show how good Aljamain Sterling is. Yes, it was all grappling, not a lot of excitement in the fight, but power to him. I just think it's harder to get the fights you want when the fans are booing you the whole fight, because the whole crowd was booing, and Dana White's not a fan of that. That's not going to get you to superstardom. That's not going to get you the big fights that you want. But you can't doubt that Aljamain Sterling is the real deal. Next up, Jiri Prochazka versus Alexander Rakic. Holy hell. I picked Jiri Prochazka with a lot of doubt in my head, but because I know how good Alexander Rakic is. Jiri Prochazka comes in and he just starts getting chopped. That front leg is just chopped. He looks like he's not moving the same. You know, he's unorthodox. His hands are down like always. Alexander Rakic, on the other hand, looks like a technical monster. The guy's not making a mistake. His hands are up. He's landing the good shots. He was outstriking Jiri Prochazka by like 10 strikes, like times 10 strikes. Like if Jiri had 4, Rakic had 40. He was outclassing the shit out of him. Round 1, 10-9 Rakic, no questions asked. Round 2 comes in, and all of a sudden in the beginning, Jiri lands a blow which kind of wobbles Rakic, and I'm like, okay, we still have an opportunity. 3 minutes go by, Jiri Prochazka catches Alexander Ratchik because of his unorthodox approach. And I'm never doubting Jiri Prochazka again. I did pick him, but I was worried in that fight. He ultimately finishes Alexander Ratchik in the second round. And method to his madness, was there a strategy? Was it leg kicks? Was it him close? It was just him being Jiri Prochazka, an absolute animal, an unorthodox, uncomfortable fighter to have in front of you. Alexander Ratchik is a tough guy. He could not finish him. Who's the better fighter here? If you'd ask anybody who was watching in the first round, you say Alexander Ratchik is just more technical, better. Jiri Prochazka has nothing on him. I swear to God, that was my analysis in the first round. Second round comes around. The king of being unorthodox, the king of making someone uncomfortable, the freaking real samurai, right? They called him a fake samurai. Now I'm going to say he's a real samurai. An absolute beast. Jiri Prochazka, give the guy his flowers. He did an absolutely fantastic job and an incredible comeback. So we move on to the main card. And up to this point, I mean, the card was fantastic. I didn't need a main card. I was okay with what we had seen. That was good enough for me. I had great fights in my view. I mean, just incredible performances with incredible star power up to this point. But it only gets better. So we start off Bo Nickel versus Cody Brundage. In my opinion, I still think that should have been the last fight of the prelims. I think if you put Jiri Prochazka and Ratchik in this opening slot for the main card, I think position-wise it would have been perfect. But whatever. Bo Nickel comes in. We saw early grappling success, but we saw Cody Brundage keep up with Bo Nickel, something we haven't seen before. Cody Brundage did a great job. I want to recognize him for a fantastic job. He stopped Bo Nickel from taking him down a couple of times. Ultimately, Bo Nickel did get the takedown, and he was looking for submissions. He took his bag. We saw everything we expected Bo Nickel to do. It just came at a slower pace. We saw Bo Nickel have to work to get what he wanted instead of it just kind of happening naturally from him. So I like the fact that Bo Nickel was tested, but ultimately round 2, we see the same story as always. Bo Nickel takes the guy down. He found the submission. And again, I just want to say that Cody Brundage really tested Bo Nickel. Bo Nickel seemed a little disappointed in himself after the fight, but I just think that's what's going to come when you're facing tougher opponents. I don't think we're going to see Bo Nickel finishing people in the first minute in his next few fights. I think we're going to see people actually be able to deal with his grappling, be able to stay away from a submission for some time, and we're going to have to see Bo Nickel work. And hopefully we see a little more striking, right? Hopefully I see someone really exhaust Bo Nickel, stop him from taking them down, and then we have to see a little bit more of Bo Nickel striking, because that's what we're going to need if we're going to become champ, Bo. All right, then we move on. A lightweight matchup for the ages. Charles Oliveira, Arman Tsarukyan. In my opinion, what I thought was going to be fight of the night. It was a fun fight, but ultimately, I think the difference here, we saw an experienced guy versus the young, hungry guy who wants the belt. I think that's ultimately what made the big difference. Charles Oliveira spent half of this fight on his back. Arman Tsarukyan pushing the pace, which I thought Arman Tsarukyan was going to push the pace in the beginning, and then we're going to see Charles Oliveira come back from behind. We've seen it time and time again, and I thought he was going to find some sneaky submission. Arman Tsarukyan pushed the pace. Charles Oliveira had a few good moments. He had a really nice locked-in guillotine in the first round. We thought the fight was over, but Arman Tsarukyan found his way out of it. After that, Charles Oliveira didn't really have a big moment. He had a few submission attempts, but my problem is these submission attempts would come with like 30 seconds left in the rounds. So what are we doing? So you were dominated for 4.5 minutes. All of a sudden, you found something up your sleeve. At last 30 seconds of the fight, oh my God, Charles Oliveira is trying to come up with something. Why didn't we do that earlier in the round? It was risky. Take the risk. You're losing the fight. So ultimately, Arman Tsarukyan wins a split decision, which everyone was surprised. I was too. I had it going Arman Tsarukyan's way, unanimous decision, but it was a split decision, but it's the right call. Charles Oliveira did not do enough to win that fight, in my opinion. I think ultimately the biggest difference was not skill set or level. I think the difference is that Arman Tsarukyan is hungrier than Charles Oliveira, and I think it showed when Charles Oliveira spent so much time on his back, even though I got to give credit to Arman Tsarukyan for keeping him there, but I think Charles Oliveira wasn't taking risk. I don't think Charles Oliveira was looking for a big moment. Charles Oliveira at some points in this fight was just trying to stay alive, and because of that, he lost it. Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway. I could talk about this for an hour. I mean, this is probably the best fight we've seen from Max Holloway in his career. Wow. 2 BMFs. They both are. They both deserve it. Justin Gaethje gets his nose broken in round number 1. And in my opinion, that just set the pace for the rest of the fight. And I'm not making an excuse for the guy, but to fight another 20 minutes with a broken nose where you're barely breathing through it, probably not breathing through it, is a tough thing to do. And especially against someone who brings the volume like Max Holloway. So I picked Justin Gaethje for this fight. I was certain of it. I can't believe how confident I was, and I really doubted Max Holloway. Like any true man, I admit when I'm wrong. I was extremely wrong about Max Holloway, and I apologize to the fans for that one because, man, do I look like an idiot. Max Holloway delivered a masterclass, what I call a masterclass. Max Holloway gave us 25 minutes of excellence, and two BMFs who had no interest in grappling. Two guys who wanted a highlight, two guys who wanted to mess each other up, and they did that. Justin Gaethje, for Max Holloway to come up to lightweight, to fight Justin Gaethje, a contender, someone who's fought for the title multiple times. Justin Gaethje is the real deal. So for Max Holloway to come up and, in my opinion, outclass him the way he did just says so much about Max Holloway and where he is in his career. People thinking he's declining, people who saw him lose 3 times to Volk. You could have your doubts about Max Holloway. I think it all gets erased this last weekend. There's no reason to doubt Max Holloway. In the final 10 seconds of the fight, something we've seen Max Holloway do before, he calls for his opponent to meet him in the middle of the octagon, on the canvas, right in the middle, to just start shooting haymakers. Justin Gaethje, of course, being the fighter he is, he says, okay, let's go. I'll meet you right there. So they both start throwing punches with 10 seconds left in the fight. Nice combinations, body shots, they're landing punches. Justin Gaethje's whiffing a few. And with 1 second left, Max Holloway hits a nice body shot on Justin Gaethje. He changes levels on him, comes right back up, and hits him with a hook that Justin Gaethje will never forget. And the reason he'll never forget it is because it left Justin Gaethje making out with the canvas, face down. 1 second left in a 5-round fight where two guys were beating each other nonstop. Absolutely just picking each other apart, hurting each other, and Max Holloway knocks out Justin Gaethje with 1 second left. Write a better story. You can't. That is as big as a Super Bowl 1 second left Hail Mary catch in the end zone to win the fight, to win the game. One thing about this that I think really marks its place in history is the fact that Max Holloway had no business doing that. Max Holloway was about to win the fight. Unanimous decision, no questions asked. But Max Holloway, being the fighter he is, the BMF that he is, he calls his opponent into the middle of the octagon with 10 seconds left. The riskiest thing you could do. The riskiest thing you could do if you're winning a fight. And he chose to do it just because of who he is. And he performed. He delivered. And for that, I say Max Holloway calls whatever shot he wants. Max Holloway wants to go fight for the 145-pound belt. He gets it. Max Holloway wants to stay at lightweight and fight whoever the hell he wants. He gets it. And speaking of featherweight, Ilia Topuria was in the crowd. I'm going to put up the picture. Ilia Topuria saw a ghost. Ilia Topuria, one of the most arrogant and confident fighters I've seen in a long time, saw a ghost. I don't care what he says now. I don't care if he calls him out. Ilia Topuria watching that fight was scared shitless. And you see it in his face. You can't hide it. Incredible. The co-main event. Weili Zhang, Yang Xiaonan. The Chinese matchup of the night. Huge fight in the strawweight division. The most exciting fight you'd ever see in female fights, if you ask me. I mean, these girls delivers. Zhang Weili, Yang Xiaonan. This fight, we saw a TKO, we saw submission, and ultimately we saw a decision. Yang Xiaonan was out. Yang Xiaonan went to sleep in this fight, and the bell saved her. She was out. Weili pushed her off of her, and you see her out of it and just wake up. And she's kind of getting up, and you even hear her corner say, we need her to wake up. And I don't know if they gave her like ammonia salts or something. They gave her smelling salts. Boom. She's back into the fight. Back into the fight. And after that, it actually looked like she won the next round. Later on in that fight, I've seen refs stop the fight for less. Yang Xiaonan was face down on the canvas with Weili on top of her, just nailing strikes on her head. I mean, she landed probably like 25 punches. And I thought they were going to call a TKO here. They didn't. I have so much respect for Yang Xiaonan. So much respect for her. I mean, she's an absolute beast. And the fact that she stayed alive through a submission and something that could have been considered a TKO, props to her, man. She's the real deal. Ultimately, Weili couldn't finish her, and Weili wins in decision, but that's probably the best female fight I've ever seen in my life for 5 rounds. Alex Pereira, Jamal Hill. All right. Jamal Hill coming back from an injury, overly confident walking into this fight, and I ultimately picked Alex Pereira, but a part of me was like, what does Jamal Hill know that we don't? What is he going to do? And he's like, I'm going to knock out Alex Pereira. And in my head, I was like, man, he's just saying that. That guy's going to shoot. The only thing that makes sense against Alex Pereira after seeing him with that mean hook of his, bro, we're going to tell him we're going to strike. I'm going to avoid his leg kicks. I'm shooting at this guy. We're going to the ground. I'm the better mixed martial artist. And chances are Jamal Hill could win a fight against Alex Pereira if he decides to grapple. Who knows? We won't never know. But I like to think I'm the better mixed martial artist. I got to grapple this guy. There's no need for the strike against him. For what? It's too risky. Jamal Hill decides to strike against him. And I think I see one of the coldest moments for Alex Pereira. And this guy has had a million of cold moments. I mean, this guy's an ice cold killer. Cold-blooded type of dude here. So Jamal Hill goes for a kick. It hits Alex Pereira's cup. You hear the thud. Herb Dean is walking in to stop them, right? To take a few seconds, make sure the fighter's okay. Alex Pereira stays locked in on Jamal Hill. He puts his right hand out, telling Herb Dean, get the fuck back. I'm not done with this guy. 2 seconds later, Alex Pereira comes in, closes the distance, hits Jamal Hill with a left hook that rolls his eyes back and ultimately ends the fight. Knockout in the first round within 3 minutes. I mean, we didn't see anything. We saw a little bit of feeling out, a few leg kicks. Nothing had happened. The fight for me hadn't started yet. And all of a sudden, Alex Pereira just stops Herb Dean from stopping the fight. He's like, no. I'm good. Check this shit out. Boom. Knocks him out and ultimately gives us a nice little meme where he's like, I don't even know that guy's name who does that. But incredible. Just incredible. Alex Pereira is the freaking boogeyman. He's 10-2 now in mixed martial arts. And it's funny. Jamal Hill was asking Israel Adesanya for advice. And it was funny because you're asking the guy who's 1-3 against your opponent. Even though he won the last fight, but he's 1-3 against them. What the hell are you asking him? Whatever Jamal's game plan was, bullshit. Terrible. I hated it. It didn't work, obviously. But I don't know how you could go into a fight with Alex Pereira and not think grappling is your way to win. Nobody should say, I'm going to stand toe-to-toe with Alex Pereira. It's been proven time and time again. It's not a good idea. But anyway, absolute madness. In my opinion, the best card of the year. I'm curious to see how you feel. But before we go, I do have to say Dana White in the post-fight press conference, of course, because he has to live on that high, comes out with 2 announcements. Number 1, UFC 302 headline, Islam Makhachev versus Dustin Poirier. I like it. Is there someone who's more deserving of it right now than Dustin Poirier? Safe to say yes. I would give it to Arman Tsarukyan. That's a fight you could give him. But it is what it is. UFC 303, ladies and gentlemen, June 29th, the moment many have been waiting for. Conor McGregor is going to fight Michael Chandler in Las Vegas, Nevada. So, I made a lot of comments about Michael Chandler wasting his prime and his career when he's waiting for someone who probably won't end up fighting him. I was wrong about that. We're getting the fight, and we're getting it on June 29th for UFC 303. Let me know what you guys think about that, guys. Be sure to subscribe. Always a pleasure. I'm the MMA Casual.